For what purpose does the gentleman from Texas seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, I move that the House suspend the rules and pass H.R. 1626 as amended.
The clerk will report the title of the bill.
H.R. 1626, a bill to reduce duplication of information technology at the Department of Homeland Security and for other purposes.
Pursuant to the rule, the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Hurd, and the gentlewoman from New Jersey, Mrs. Watson-Coleman, each will control 20 minutes. The chair recognizes the gentleman from Texas.
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that all members have 5 legislative days within which to revise and extend their remarks and include any extraneous material on the bill under consideration.
Without objection.
Mr. Speaker, I yield myself such time as I may consume.
The gentleman is yet recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in strong support of H.R. 1626. Call me crazy, but it just doesn't make sense to me to have federal agencies using multiple IT systems that do the same thing. As chairman of the Oversight and Government Reform IT Subcommittee and a member of the Homeland Security Committee, I see these cost overruns and hear stories of duplicative systems on a daily basis. It is a ridiculous and outrageous waste of taxpayer dollars. This year, the GAO's annual high-risk report designated information technology as a new area of high risk within the government. Federal agencies spend nearly $80 billion a year on IT projects, and nearly 80% of them are on outdated and legacy systems. In the Department of Homeland Security, there are more than 600 IT systems in FEMA alone. The DHS IT Duplication Reduction Act is designed to change that. My bill requires the DHS Chief Information Officer to identify all IT systems in the department, figure out which ones are redundant, and then come up with a strategy to reduce their number. When I was building a cybersecurity firm in the private sector, things like this didn't happen because there's no way that a small business trying to grow would ever waste their money like this. And Washington should have the same mentality, especially since this money being wasted isn't Washington's in the first place. I believe Washington can and should be much better stewards of the dollars taxpayers have entrusted to them. It's past time to change the "it's not my money, so let's spend it" culture here in Washington that leads to this kind of waste. Taxpayers should be able to trust that every dollar is being used carefully and thoughtfully on effective, efficient government that works for them. I believe this legislation is a good start in reining in federal IT spending and getting our government back on track. I reserve the balance of my time.
The gentleman reserves. The gentlewoman from New Jersey is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in strong support of H.R. 1626, the DHS IT Duplication Reduction Act of 2015, and I yield myself such time as I may consume.
The gentlewoman is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, H.R. 1626 seeks to address duplication or fragmentation within the Department of Homeland Security's information technology systems. Specifically, H.R. 1626 requires the department's Chief Information Officer to report on the number of IT systems throughout the department and identify and address those areas where duplication or fragmentation may exist. This undertaking at the headquarters level should help inform the department's IT budget planning, which, in light of sequestration and the downward trend of the department's budget, becomes all the more important when considering the critical missions entrusted to DHS. This legislation is in the spirit of the department's Unity of Effort initiative and has the potential of fostering more coordinated IT planning and management among the department's components. In committee, a number of technical refinements offered by Democrats were accepted to ensure that reducing redundancy frees up resources for DHS's operations. And with that, Mr. Speaker, I do urge support for this measure and reserve the balance of my time.
The gentlewoman reserves. The gentleman is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I have no more speakers. If the gentlewoman from New Jersey has no further speakers, I'm prepared to close once the gentlewoman does.
The gentleman reserves. The gentlewoman from New Jersey is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield myself such time as I may consume.
The gentlewoman is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In closing, I once again want to point out the bipartisan efforts in regard to this measure. This measure has the potential of fostering more coordinated IT planning and management among the department's components. I urge the passage and support of this measure. And with that, Mr. Speaker, I yield back the balance of my time.
The gentlewoman yields back. The gentleman from Texas is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I yield myself such time as I might consume.
The gentleman is recognized.
I'd like to thank Chairman McCall, Ranking Member Thompson, Congresswoman Watson Coleman, and my colleagues on the Homeland Security Committee for their support on this bill. And I once again urge all my colleagues to support this strong, bipartisan piece of legislation, and I yield back the balance of my time.
The gentleman